guest today is Japan's ambassador to Indonesia, His Excellency Kenji Kanasugi. Good afternoon, Your Excellency. How are you?
Good afternoon. Yeah, fine, thank you, and thank you for you having me today.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for allowing us to interview you at your residence, amid your busy schedule, of course. And thank you for joining me to discuss Indonesia's G20 Presidency and also the state of bilateral ties between Japan and Indonesia.
Yes.
But to start with, could you tell us about some of the highlights throughout your journey as a career member of senior foreign service, perhaps including your previous overseas assignments or tour of duties and your impression of Indonesia?
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I started my diplomatic career in 1983 in Australia. And since then, I was assigned to, in addition to Australia, Malaysia, United States, Washington, D.C., South Korea, and then Indonesia. So Indonesia is my 5th overseas assignment. And my impression about Indonesia is that Indonesian people are very warm-hearted and kind. And also Indonesia is a young, energetic country with a lot of potential into the future. So I very much enjoy myself while I'm in Indonesia.
Is it one of your difficult posts?
Well, as I said, I'm received very warmly by Indonesian friends. So, of course, there are ups and downs in our bilateral relationship, but I'm basically enjoying myself.
How many provinces that you have ever been to in Indonesia, or cities?
Of course, Bali 5 times because all the international meetings are taking place in Bali now, G20 meetings and others. And also I've been to Surabaya, I've been to Semarang, I've been to Medan, Lake Toba, I've been to Jogja, and also Papua.
Wow!
So all these places, and I need to cover majority of provinces of Indonesia during my service in this country.
Right, okay. Your Excellency, what are the main programs in strengthening the cooperation between Japan and Indonesia that you would like to achieve during your ambassadorial post in Jakarta? And perhaps this will include the collaborative efforts between Japan and Indonesia to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, I think Japan, Indonesia, we call ourselves as strategic partners, and we are here to create and maintain free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. In the past, Japan-Indonesia relationship has been evolved around economic interactions, trade and investment. Japanese investment is one of the most important factors for the development of Indonesia, and we'd like to see Indonesia becoming, continue to develop sustainable development into the future without being trapped into so-called middle income trap. And for that purpose, I think we'd like to see Indonesia becoming a production and export hub in the region. So Japan is more than happy to cooperate with Indonesia in terms of infrastructure development, as well as direct foreign investment from Japan to Indonesia. And also, not only economic areas, more recently, Japan and Indonesia have been developing political and security cooperation. That's a new area of cooperation, and I would like to see that area more developing into the future. And luckily, both Japan and Indonesia, we are having COVID-19 pandemic under control. So I think we can re-energize our partnership into the future, taking the occasion of G20 Presidency of Indonesia.
Right, okay. In terms of security, you mentioned earlier, is there any specific programs that you would like to emphasize on?
Well, for example, we have a so-called 2+2 ministerial meeting. That is a foreign and defense ministers meeting. And Indonesia was the first country among ASEAN nations with which Japan studies to have 2+2 framework ministerial meetings. And also this August, there was a Super Garuda Shield exercise. Garuda Shield exercise has been primarily Indonesia, United States bilateral military exercise. But this year, Indonesia expanded into multilateral framework. And for the first time in history, Japanese self-defense forces, land self-defense forces, was invited to take part in the Super Garuda Shield exercise. So I think a lot of efforts have been made to enhance our security political cooperation.
Right, okay. And Excellency, since the establishment of our diplomatic relations in 1958,
yes.
How do you see it developing?
Well, I think we have a long history of cooperation. As you said, we established a diplomatic relationship in 1958. And in this 64 years, Japanese companies came Indonesia. At the beginning, the majority are coming in the 1970s. And now we have about 2,000 Japanese companies operating throughout Indonesia. And these companies have been creating 7.2 million jobs and contributing to 8.4% of the GDP and about a quarter of export of this country. So I think we came a long way to develop a kind of win-win cooperation between our two countries.
Right, okay. And by the way, education and cultural sector are also among areas of cooperations that both countries are strong at. And are there any specific programs that in these two fields that the embassy or the government of Japan will organize this year, as we know that both countries will commemorate our diplomatic ties, the 65th anniversary next year. Are there any specific programs?
Well, education and culture are two very important areas. They are important not only they bring about economic benefits to our countries, but that create a foundation of mutual respect and mutual trust to each other. And unfortunately, for the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, Japan has not been able to accept foreign students, including Indonesian students. But we opened our gate in March this year, and currently there are about more than 5,000 Indonesian students studying in Japan at the tertiary education institutions. And Japanese government as well as private companies are offering numerous scholarship programs for Indonesian students. So if you are interested in going to Japan to study, please refer to our embassy. Or maybe you can take a look at the YouTube of Mr. Jerome Paulin, who went to Japan on a Japanese company's scholarship program, and he's been a great success. So that's one way to learn how going to Japan on scholarship program work about. About culture, again, there is a very important cultural exchanges between our two countries, and in order to promote Indonesian people's awareness about Japan, we've been having Jakarta Japan Matsuri, Jakarta Japan Festival since 2009.
Right.
But again, for the last 2 years, because of the COVID, we were not able to have Jakarta Japan Matsuri. But finally, this year, from October 14th to 16th, we are going to have Jakarta Japan Matsuri, both face-to-face and online. So it's a kind of hybrid format.
Right.
So I think it's a good way to promote awareness about Japan among Indonesian people. And of course, it's a mutual. So we really hope Indonesian people come and see what's happening during the course of Jakarta Japan Matsuri.
Right. Okay. How many participants are you expecting to join the event?
We don't really know at this moment, but as I said, it's a hybrid format. So we hope to see many Indonesian people, not only Indonesian people, but many Japanese
Who live
take a
in-
look at
yeah.
not only within Indonesia, but from Japan or
Right.
from all over the world.
Right.
So I think it's a very interesting program.
Right. Okay. And Ambassador Kanasugi, recently in July this year, President Joko Widodo visited Japan. And concerning that, could you share with us some of the progress following his meetings with high-ranking officials and also business leaders? Perhaps there's a discussion about the development of strategic project. You mentioned it earlier, maybe the new capital in Kalimantan or the Pantimban port or MRT projects, yeah, and also the coordination in setting up the priorities in creating a peaceful region, as we know that Indonesia will be chairing the ASEAN while Japan will host the G7 summit next year. Yeah.
Well, there has been a lot of positive development since President Joko Widodo visited Japan this year. And for example, in the area of Patimban Port, auto terminal started its operation December last year. And we estimated that this year, about 160 units of vehicles made in Indonesia are going to be shipped out through Patimban Port. But things are going very smoothly. So all in all, we hope that we can ship out 190 units of vehicles made in Indonesia to the region and beyond. So that's just the first year of development. And Japan is very determined to invest more in the development of Patimban Port, auto terminal, as well as container terminal. And MRT, since the inception of MRT in 2019, I was told by many Indonesian friends that MRT has been changing the lifestyle of Jakartans. People started to rely more on public transportation. And that project was completed only 1/4 of the entire project. Currently, project is going on to extend from Bundaran Hai Station to Kota Station.
Right.
And about, I think, 10 days ago, I took part in a groundbreaking ceremony near Kota Station,
Right.
along with Minister of Transportation, Minister Budi, and the Governor Anis of Jakarta. And we hope to see the early conclusion of this extension of north-south line. And also, we are happy to provide our support to east-west line of MRT. So I think by the time we complete, together with Indonesia, when we complete this project, I think Jakarta's lifestyle will be transformed. And about peace and prosperity in this part of the world, yes, Japan, Indonesia are two of the largest democracies in the world. And there is every reason for our two countries to cooperate to maintain peace, stability, and prosperity of this part of the world, particularly in the light of the Russian invasion to Ukraine. A similar situation may occur in this part of the world in the future. So as the two largest democracies, we need to make it sure that the rule of law prevails in this part of the world. Otherwise, we are going to face with the law of the jungle, which we don't really want to see. So I think there are a lot of areas of cooperation we can pursue. And since the visit of President Joko Widodo, a lot of tangible development are taking place.
Right. Okay, Your Excellency, now I'm going to talk about G20 related issues. Indonesia serves as the chair of G20 this year, and actually I have asked this question to other leaders from G20 nation. Now I'm going to ask the similar questions to you.
Sure.
Previously, President Joko Widodo made a statement that there is a need for the developed countries to help developing countries in the transition energy by providing financial support. So how would your country, as one of the G20 members, respond to this call?
Yeah, I think that's true that we need to provide financial support, but we need to provide technical cooperation as well in order to achieve realistic and pragmatic energy transition. And I think in the case of Japan, Indonesia, we are in a similar situation. Both countries are very heavily reliant on fossil fuel technologies, and also we are archipelagic nations, so it's very difficult and costly, if not impossible, to connect our power grids with outside countries. So I think we need to make the best use of the existing fossil fuel technologies for now. And in our case, co-firing of coal with biomass, ammonia, hydrogen, and making the coal-fired plants more efficient is one way to achieve carbon neutral, and also so-called CCUS technology, the carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. These are still disruptive technologies and long way to go, but there are a lot of cooperation going on between Japan and Indonesia. And recently, Jakarta Japan Club, that's Japan Chamber of Commerce in Jakarta. All the major Japanese affiliated companies are members of the Jakarta Japan Club, and they established a carbon neutral task force. And they identified there are more than 340 projects going on between Japan and Indonesia, within Indonesia, which are contributing to achieving carbon neutral by 2060. These include co-firing of coal as well as CCUS technologies. So I think financial cooperation as well as technical cooperation, both needs to go tandem.
Correct. Yeah. And Japan has the expertise in the sustainable energy and digital technology programs. So what can Indonesia learn from Japan in this field?
Well, it's not a one-sided story. It has to be a mutual cooperation. As I said about the energy transformation, there are a lot of projects are ongoing in Indonesia, and it's a collaborative work between Japanese companies and Indonesian counterparts.
Right.
And in terms of digital transformation, frankly speaking, Indonesia is more advanced than Japan.
Oh, really?
When it comes to how you apply digital technologies to day-to-day life, like Peduli Lindungi.
Right.
That's a very useful tool to encourage people to take vaccines and to put the control on the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think Indonesia is more advanced in terms of digital transformation. But that said, Japanese companies are trying to make an inroad here. For example, one Japanese company is trying to make fishing industry more efficient. They try to create a system whereby they utilize observation data collected by meteorological satellite, and these data are connected with information coming from the sea, so that fishing vessels can predict whereabouts of the fish. So making the industry more efficient and less costly. That's just one example of how Japan can contribute to the digital transformation of Indonesia. But once again, it's not one-sided.
Right.
It's a mutual cooperation between our two countries.
Oh, wow. Is there any specific location that the study has been done on that particular?
I don't know the specific location, but Indonesia is surrounded by the sea.
Right.
So once it started, it can be applied to any part of Indonesia.
Right. Okay, Your Excellency, what do you hope to see in Indonesia's G20 presidency in overcoming global issues? We mentioned that COVID-19 pandemic, and also the increase in food prices and the fuel prices, also energy transition. And in fact, these have dominated speeches at the United Nations General Assembly. Yeah. So, yeah, what do you hope to see in Indonesia G20 presidency?
I think Indonesia's theme of G20, recover together, recover stronger, is very relevant. And also, Indonesia identified the 3 priority areas. That's health, digital, and green, and more recently, food and energy crisis. I really hope that we can come up with some tangible result in the run-up to the G20 summit. And Japan is very much determined to cooperate with Indonesia for the success of G20 summit. That said, I think G20 is a process. G20 is like a long distance running. One single presidency cannot resolve all the pending issues. So what is important for Indonesia as president of G20 is to keep the G20 process intact despite global geopolitical crisis, and pass the baton to the next presidency of India. That's all other preceding G20 countries have been doing. Keep the process intact and achieve something tangible and pass the baton to the next presidency. And I have every confidence in Indonesia. And as I said, we are determined to continue our cooperation for success of G20 in November.
All right. Okay, Your Excellency, I think we're good. And is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, as I said at the outset, I'm really enjoying myself. And this year, as you said, the G20 presidency held by Indonesia, and next year, ASEAN presidency by Indonesia, and G7, Japan. So within these 2 years, we can have a lot of collaborative work, not only bilateral, but resolving or addressing common agenda items of the world, be that environment or digital transformation. So I'm happy to serve for enhancing Japan-Indonesia relationship, but at the same time, I'm very much enjoying myself here in Jakarta.
All right, awesome. Okay, Ambassador Kenji Kanasugi, once again, it is my honor to have the opportunity to interview you at your residence, and thank you for all your valuable views. And Japan is one of Indonesia's good friends, and has been actively contributing to the development in Indonesia. Thank you, and have a nice one.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you.